Hello my hero, have a nice viewing dear. If you like the story, please like it and write your opinion in the comments, please please please.
I never expected to find out this way. A simple mistake, really. My wife had left her tablet unlocked on the kitchen counter. She was in the shower, and a message popped up, one I wasn't supposed to see. "I can't wait to see you again tonight. He has no idea." Winking face. At first, I thought it was a joke. Some flirty inside joke between us that I had forgotten. But then I saw the name. Ryan. I didn't know any Ryan. A sick feeling churned in my gut as I tapped the screen. The chat opened up, revealing a long history of messages, pictures, and plans. My wife, my successful, wealthy wife, had been having an affair. And not just with anyone. With a guy at least 15 years younger than her. I clenched my fists as I scrolled further, reading how she lied to me, how she sneaked around, how she spent money on him. Dinners. Hotels. Gifts. I had given this woman my loyalty. My trust. And she had treated me like a fool. At that moment, I could have stormed into the bathroom and confronted her. I could have screamed, demanded answers, made a scene. But I didn't. Because if she wanted to play dirty, she had no idea who she was messing with. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to ruin her. I spent the next few days pretending like nothing had changed. If she was going to lie to me, I'd let her believe she was still winning. But in reality? I was already making my moves. My wife, Emma, built her company from the ground up. She was smart, ruthless in business, and always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. But she had made one crucial mistake: she underestimated me. I wasn't just her husband. I was her business partner. And while she was busy sneaking around with her boy toy, I started working behind the scenes. First, I met with our company's legal team. Quietly. Discreetly. I needed to know exactly what my rights were, what I could access, and more importantly, how I could shift control into my hands without her realizing. Then I started gathering evidence. Every transaction, every expense linked to Ryan. The company funds she had borrowed for their trips. The business meetings she had skipped to spend time with him. And finally, I made my biggest move. I called a meeting with the board of directors. Emma didn't know yet, but her empire was already slipping through her fingers. And when I was done, she wouldn't just lose her company. She'd lose everything. I played my part well. Smiling, laughing, acting like the devoted husband while she went on pretending she wasn't living a double life. She thought she was clever, sneaking off for business meetings, coming home late with fake exhaustion in her voice. But I knew where she had been. I knew who she had been with. And soon, so would everyone else. The board meeting was set. Emma thought it was just a routine discussion, something minor. Something she could breeze through without worry. She had no idea what was coming. That morning, she kissed me on the cheek before leaving, completely unaware that I was about to rip her world apart. I arrived early, shaking hands with the executives, the investors, people who had known me for years, trusted me as Emma's partner. What they didn't know was that, by the end of the day, I wouldn't just be her partner. I'd be her replacement. When Emma walked into the boardroom, all eyes turned to her. She smiled, confident as ever. But that confidence started to crack when she saw me sitting at the head of the table. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice still controlled, but I could hear the slightest hint of unease. I leaned forward. "Emma, why don't you take a seat? We have a lot to discuss." She hesitated but sat. The tension in the room was thick as I pulled out a folder and slid it across the table toward the other board members. "Inside this folder," I said, my voice steady, "is proof that Emma has been misusing company funds for personal expenses. Thousands of dollars spent on, let's call it extracurricular activities." Murmurs erupted around the room. Emma's face paled. "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "This is a setup." I smiled. "Is it? Because I have receipts. Transactions. Dates. Names." I glanced around at the board. Tell me, do you all still trust Emma to lead this company? Because I don't. And I'm guessing our investors won't either. Emma's hands clenched into fists. You can't do this. I leaned back, satisfied. Oh, but I already have. The board members exchanged glances, whispering among themselves. One of them, a senior executive, cleared his throat. Emma, these are serious allegations. Given the evidence, we have no choice but to open a formal investigation. Until then, you are to step down as CEO. Effective immediately. Emma's world shattered in an instant. And I just sat there, watching it happen. Emma's face was frozen in shock. The boardroom, once her kingdom, was now turning against her. She tried to speak, to argue, but no words came out. The weight of the moment crushed her. She wasn't in control anymore. I watched as she gripped the table, her knuckles white. This isn't over. She finally spat, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. I chuckled. Oh, Emma, it really is. Security was called in. A board member, someone who once worshipped the ground she walked on, stood up and cleared his throat. Emma, as of now, you are to vacate your office. We will conduct a full audit, and if any misuse of company funds is confirmed, legal action will follow. She turned to me, desperation flashing in her eyes. You did this to me. You set me up. I tilted my head. No, sweetheart. You did this to yourself the moment you thought you could betray me and get away with it. The board members whispered among themselves as security moved forward. Emma stood, holding her head high, trying to salvage whatever dignity she had left. But the cracks in her armor were showing. I built this company. She hissed as she walked past me. You're nothing without me. I smirked. Funny. That's exactly what Ryan thought about you. But where is he now? Her expression faltered, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Because she knew, I had just taken everything from her. As she was escorted out, I turned to the rest of the board and adjusted my suit. Now then, shall we get back to business? The silence in the boardroom after Emma's exit was deafening. Everyone was still processing what had just happened. I let the tension linger for a moment before speaking. Now that Emma is no longer in control, we need to discuss the future of this company. I said, my tone calm but authoritative. Investors are going to panic. Employees will have questions. We need stability, and we need it now. One of the senior board members nodded. You've been involved in the company for years, and you clearly had the foresight to prevent a disaster. Do you plan on stepping in as CEO? I leaned back in my chair, glancing around the room. That depends. Does anyone here still believe Emma deserves to be in control of what she almost destroyed? No one said a word. That was answer enough. Within the hour, the paperwork was drawn up. The board officially appointed me as CEO, effective immediately. Emma's company was now mine. As I signed the final document, a familiar number flashed across my phone screen, Emma. I let it ring. She was calling to beg, to scream, to fight for what she had lost. But I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses. Not anymore. I had taken her company. And now? She had nothing left. I didn't answer Emma's call. I didn't need to. She had already lost, and we both knew it. Instead, I focused on securing my position. Over the next few days, I met with key executives, assuring them that the company was in better hands now. Investors who had once trusted Emma were now looking to me for leadership. And I made sure they knew I wasn't just a placeholder. I was here to stay. Meanwhile, Emma's life spiraled out of control. The news of her removal had spread like wildfire, and with it, the details of her financial mismanagement. Reporters started digging, uncovering even more dirt, questionable transactions, reckless spending, and, of course, her affair with Ryan. Speaking of Ryan, I heard through my sources that he had vanished the moment Emma lost power. Whatever promises she had made to him were worthless now, and just like that, she had lost everything she risked our marriage for. Then, late one night, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Emma standing there. Her once flawless confidence was gone. Her hair was a mess, her eyes red from crying. She looked nothing like the woman who had once ruled an empire. "Please," she whispered. "We need to talk." I stared at her for a long moment before stepping aside. "Fine. Talk." She stepped inside, her hands trembling. "I made a mistake. I should have never." She swallowed hard. "I was stupid. I thought." I cut her off. "You thought I was weak. You thought I'd never find out. You thought you could have it all, me, the company, and your little boy toy on the side." She looked down. "I lost everything." I let out a dry laugh. "Yeah, Emma. You did. And you deserve it." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Is there any way we can fix this?" I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. Then I leaned in, my voice cold. "No." She let out a shaky breath, nodding as if she had expected that answer. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out the door. And just like that, Emma was gone from my life for good. Days passed, and Emma didn't try to contact me again. Maybe she finally realized there was nothing left to say. Maybe she had simply run out of ways to manipulate me. Either way, I didn't care. My life was moving forward, while hers had come to a screeching halt. News outlets continued to cover her downfall. Headlines exposed her lavish spending, her reckless behavior, and her humiliating fall from power. Her so-called friends had abandoned her. Without money, influence, or reputation, she was nobody. One afternoon, Richard, my lawyer, called. "You're going to love this," he said, amusement in his voice. "Emma officially filed a lawsuit against the company. She's claiming wrongful removal as CEO." I smirked. "Desperate move." "Very. And completely useless. She has no case. The board's decision was airtight, and with the evidence we provided, she doesn't stand a chance. It'll be dismissed before it even makes it to court." I chuckled, shaking my head. "She just can't accept reality, can she?" "Apparently not." A few days later, the lawsuit was thrown out, just as we expected. And with that, Emma's last attempt at salvaging her past life went up in smoke. I stood by the window of my office, looking down at the city below. Everything Emma had built was now mine. And as for her? She was just another fallen queen, left to fade into obscurity. And I had never felt more powerful. Emma had officially lost. No company. No money. No friends. The lawsuit was her last, pathetic attempt at clawing back control, and now even that had crumbled. And yet, she still hadn't hit rock bottom. One evening, I was at an upscale restaurant for a business dinner when I spotted her. Emma, the once powerful CEO, now sitting alone in the corner, picking at a cheap salad. She wasn't dressed in designer brands anymore. The confidence that used to radiate from her? Gone. Our eyes met, and for a brief moment, I saw something I never expected. Regret. She quickly looked away, as if hoping I'd ignore her, pretend she didn't exist. I didn't. I excused myself from my table and walked toward her. She stiffened as I approached, gripping her fork like it was the only thing holding her together. "Enjoying dinner?" I asked, my voice dripping with amusement. She forced a small, bitter smile. "Gloating doesn't suit you." I chuckled. "Neither does poverty, but here you are." Her jaw tightened. "I get it. You won. You took everything. Congratulations." I tilted my head. "I didn't take anything, Emma. You gave it away the moment you thought you could betray me and still walk away on top." She exhaled shakily, looking down at her plate. "I screwed up. That's the understatement of the century." A silence stretched between us. For the first time, she wasn't trying to manipulate me, wasn't scheming or plotting. She was just defeated. I could have walked away. But instead, I leaned in slightly. "Now tell me, Emma, was he worth it?" Her breath hitched. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. I smiled. "I thought so." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving her sitting there with the only thing she had left. Regret. Emma never tried to contact me after that night. Maybe she finally understood that there was nothing left to say. Or maybe she couldn't stand to face the reality of what she had become, a woman who had it all and lost everything. But fate wasn't done punishing her just yet. A few weeks later, Richard called me again. "You're going to love this," he said with a chuckle. "Emma's in trouble." I leaned back in my chair, intrigued. "What now?" Turns out, some of those business expenses she was funneling toward Ryan weren't just unethical, they were illegal. The forensic audit we initiated, it uncovered tax fraud, embezzlement, and a whole list of financial crimes. The authorities are investigating. I let out a slow breath, a smirk creeping onto my face. So she might actually face charges? Oh, she will. And prison time isn't off the table. For a moment, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered the nights she spent lying to my face, the arrogance, the way she used me. She thought she was untouchable. Now, she was about to lose more than just her company. "Keep me updated," I said, ending the call. I stared out my office window at the city below, the empire that was once hers, now mine. And for the first time, I knew the truth. Her downfall wasn't just my revenge. It was karma. A month later, the final nail was driven into Emma's coffin. The trial was swift. With the overwhelming evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion, there was little her lawyers could do. She stood in court, once a powerful CEO, now just another disgraced executive facing the consequences of her greed. The judge handed down the verdict, guilty. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison. I watched the news coverage from my office, sipping a glass of whiskey as they replayed footage of her being escorted out of the courthouse. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but she kept her head down, defeated. The woman who once thought she was untouchable had finally lost everything. And I had everything I could ever want. Her company, mine. Her fortune, gone. Her reputation, destroyed. Ryan? He had disappeared the moment she got arrested, proving that he was only ever there for the money. And me? I was free. Free from her lies, free from her betrayal, free to live my life without the weight of her deception. As I leaned back in my chair, watching the final remnants of Emma's empire crumble, I realized something. Revenge isn't just about making someone pay. It's about making sure they never forget why.